Welcome back to the Pizza Story podcast. You probably know him on social media as Vinny from South Philly, but Vincenzo Minniti is an award-winning filmmaker of Washington Avenue, actor, and host of the hit podcast Inside Hollywood with Vinny. He blends a gritty and authentic spirit with a deep love for neighborhood tradition, and I can't wait for him to tell his story. Everyone, please welcome him to the podcast. Hey, Vince.
How are you, Eric? It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm great. I'm so glad to have you on today.
It's awesome. I'm so excited to talk to you and especially about pizza, but I'll let you do all the hard work.
Okay, good. I love that. So, of course, one of the first things I really like to do is talk about you, where you were brought up, where you're from, everything. Cause I want the audience to like really get to know you.
Sure. Thank you. Well, as you said, born and raised in South Philly, the Italian market area, and I love it. It's where my heart and soul really belongs. St. Paul's Parish, for those of you that know the area. And parents are from Calabria. They came over in the mid 60s. And so I had the very wonderful benefit of understanding sort of both cultures, having one foot in each country, so to speak, and understanding the customs and the traditions, and of course the food. And Philly's been always been a great town for food. Obviously, it's a ton of great places. And recently, I would say in the last 20 years, or maybe even 15 years, there's been an explosion of different types of cuisine, of different cultures that are coming to the area. And with that, they bring their own, again, traditions and food. And so we have an amazing food scene. I don't get out nearly as much as I wish I could to some of these spots, but I know a lot of great places, and those influences really shaped my early life. And I ate everything. I don't know some people. I don't want to say some of the things I've eaten, but I've eaten every. All the traditional Italian things, tripe, liver, all that stuff. I grew up with all that stuff, and now my kids wouldn't even touch or even look at. But we grew up with. I think the beauty of that being a young kid and tasting different things and being just a part of those traditional things made me want to explore food more. And so for a long time, I was always really into food.
Mhm.
And a segue into the passion for food also and neighborhood. Years later, recently, I've gotten into being a filmmaker and my award-winning film, Washington Avenue, which I got to plug, which is free, by the way, on YouTube. It's called Washington Avenue. It's an award-winning short. It's gotten awards in Rome and in India, in Athens, LA, New York. So I'm very proud of it. I'm bragging because I'm bragging for my cast and crew because it really was because of them. But it's a great story. It takes place in the Italian market where I was raised, and it was my first piece. So I wanted that to be sort of an homage to the neighborhood. But yeah, listen, great town for pizza, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So I really want to talk about Washington Ave, but I want to talk about the market and really what inspired you and just really take us back to like the Philly markets.
Well, again, the Italian market, for instance, and there's a lot of different markets. There's the Reading Terminal Market where you blend a lot of, Amish and Nouveau and Chinese and Asian and different types of food in the Reading market, but particularly the Italian market, which, and I have friends that come from New York a lot, and they always say how our Italian market is very like old school, authentic. And it's a little bit surprising to me because, I go there, I go to New York often, and I go to Mulberry Street, or I'll go to the Bronx, or I'll go to, when they have Santa Rosalie up in Brooklyn. So I go to a lot of these spots and I understand what they're talking about. And I'm very proud of the fact that we still have a good, vibrant Italian American market there. And the influence there, I think, still exists with the sort of focus on great food and just it's a really great place to just make friends and be with each other and understand the not just the Italian culture, but also the Italian American experience as well.
Absolutely. Now, do you have, your favorite memories of different foods that you love to get at the Italian market?
When I was probably like 11 or 12, I mean, they would make these wonderful mussels in like a white sauce or red sauce that they would sell out like as you're walking by. I believe it was Anastasia, the seafood place. Great food. I would stop after school, literally go, and I forget, probably was like $5 back then, which was a great deal. In little Chinese takeout containers. So I would get stuff like that. I would go to, Lorenzo's Pizza, which is a great spot, or I'd go to George's, they still sell tripe sandwiches, which I had one not too long ago. One of my little guilty pleasures, or grab a cheesesteak now. And a lot of these places too have evolved. But going back to my childhood, is Rose Pastries, which is around the corner where I grew up. Rum cake was a tradition that we would have every year. It just had just a perfect amount of rum, not oversaturated or undersaturated, but they always had great pastries, and it was, that was one of our favorite spots. I mean, we were really spoiled. Sarcones Bakery, some of the best bread, you could still find in Philly. Great restaurants. Palumbo's, which began as a boarding house back in the late 1800s, which really probably was the reason why we had an Italian market, because Frank Palumbo created this wonderful, business and slash restaurant club. It was huge. I actually was one of my first job. I was a busboy there. And at a time before Atlantic City became prominent, you'd have like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and oh my everybody that you could think of, Sammy Davis Jr., the whole Rat Pack crew, anybody that would perform, they would stop. Jimmy Durante, they will stop there. Mario Lanza, again, Mario Lanza from our neighborhood, a couple blocks away. He grew up on 7th and we're actually 6th and Christian. So we had everything in this very small little area as far as great food, great personalities, and great action. Cheesesteak it gave birth to the cheesesteak in our neighborhood. That big phenomenon, which I probably maybe 2 a year, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, I think about eating cheesesteak a lot more than I actually eat it, but I love it.
Yeah, I would say, people always ask me, oh, what's the best cheesesteak spot? It's probably easier to say which are not as good, but there's probably a good half dozen spots that I like. I mean, there's Angel's that's still in our neighborhood over on Night Street. It's phenomenal. And then the Tony Nick's, also in South Philly. Skinny Joey's is popular. Jim's on South Street is another great one. Santucci's. There's a good 5 or 6 that I always kind of recommend that are in proximity.
That's awesome. Now, can you tell me kind of where your life took you, where, you grew up in South Philly and you've had this amazing family experience, and then you become this award winning filmmaker. So, how did you get into wanting to do film?
I lived in LA right around 2008. A friend of mine moved out there and he was always asking me, come on out. So I found a good reason to go and I went. And I probably was out there for close to a year. And as soon as I arrived there, first day, I stopped in two restaurants. One was called Cafe Roma, and another one was Il Fornaio, both Italian restaurants that are unfortunately no longer there. But they both hired me the same day, and it's because I was spitting out the Italian, so I think that they liked that, and I was an East Coaster, and they liked the way I said coffee. So
Yeah.
so I guess that's the reason why and so I got hired at 2 places. I wound up working at Il Fornaio in Beverly Hills as opposed to Cafe Roma. I probably should went to Cafe Roma because that was like where Schwarzenegger, Stallone, everybody. It was like a hot spot for all the celebrities. Anyway, so being out there, I kind of found and developed a passion for storytelling. And it kind of started out when I was younger. I always loved to read books and I was always a fan of writing. And I used to write little short skits and kind of always wanted to do something creatively with writing. When I was out there, I started to meet and sort of hang out with people in the film world. So fast forward, I wound up coming back to the East Coast and married, kids, and everything kind of took a sort of a break for a while as I focused on the family.
Hmm.
Then I started to find little gaps. I was like, you know what, I got to pursue this. And then with the advent of social media, and I kind of got on a little bit late. So I got on maybe the end of 2023, something like that. And, I realized that you could be creative and we can interact just like you and I are interacting here. And you can kind of put out stuff and you can, not in so much of the vanity behind it, but you could probably create sort of maybe even something creative with this, and who knows what could happen. So I started to develop my social media, which I believe is very important if you're trying to do anything in the entertainment industry, because it always helps when you have a following.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing, you could be selling cosmetics, you could be real estate agent, whatever it is. It's right now the power of social media is huge, and it's good to try to leverage it. Anyway, so I decided to start building a following with that, and then I said, I want to make a movie, and done some fundraising. And one of the projects that I wanted to do, which is finally released now, is a mob comedy called The Pasta and Cheech Crew, which I did with my buddy. But in the little frame of time where that wasn't really kind of getting done, I said I got to do something. So I decided to come up with a story, and it's a story about a guy who's lost his father. He's kind of at a crossroads, and he's trying to figure out, like, what have I been? I'm 50 years old. What have I done in my life? What am I doing? So he starts getting kind of desperate, and he wants to seek something to do that's honorable. So he decides, he doesn't want to be a butcher in the Italian market anymore. He wants to be, he wants to pull off a heist, and he approaches the local mob. And so I won't give too much away, but that was that was what became Washington Avenue. And it was well received. I'm very, very happy about it. It's, my first little short. It was a very skeleton crew, but we had some great people that, my friend Freddie Gana, who was the lead in it. And it just was, cast and crew. I put their heart and soul onto it. They did me a big favor. And we were just at the Philadelphia International Philadelphia Independent Film Festival.
Wow.
And we had a great time, and we had a ton of people there, and they loved the project. So, that's something I want to develop into a full story. But it's won a lot of awards, and that was really nice because it kind of validated, because we're always looking for validation as Italians, aren't we? So that kind of
Right.
validated my sense that maybe I could be a story.
That's so, so cool. So tell me a little bit about your future plans with film.
So right now, I'm currently working on a series that we're going to try to pitch to a streamer like Netflix or a TV station, like as a series. It's a crime drama, and I'm working with
Nice.
a gentleman named Joe Cortese. Joe Cortese, great guy. You remember him from the Green Book. He was the guy with the hat in the beginning. They stole his hat, and he's been in a ton of stuff. 50-year career. He's actually one of his first movies where he was a lead was with Joe Pesci and Frank Vincent back 50 years ago, actually, called The Death Collector. And he's the guy who introduced Pesci to De Niro as a side note. And he's a great guy. He's a part of the Academy. And so we're working on a crime series that we're hoping to kind of pitch around soon. So if we got that, I'm working a couple other projects on my own. And I haven't quit the day job yet, but we're going to keep on trying.
Yeah, I totally understand how that is. So let's take a little bit of a detour and let's talk about Philly pizza because, I lived in South Jersey for a few years and my whole family lives in South Jersey and Western PA. Obviously, my family has a pizzeria in Western PA. So we've gone on a lot of pizza tours in Philly. So I have my favorites, but I want to hear about your favorite.
Well, I guess it depends on I notice it depends on what you like. So most people will say, "I like this type or that type." I've always been a thick, doughy type of pizza lover.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Funny people love the thin crust. I just love the doughy, almost like a focaccia. I love that kind of doughy pizza. We call it Sicilian, in New York they call it squares. So that would be my first love. But I think margarita pizzas, which honestly, a lot of this pizza I found I discovered as I got older because, back in the day, South Philly, it was just a slice with some burnt cheese on it. It really wasn't that evolved, you know. Although I have to say, back, late 80s, early 90s, Lorenzo's on South Street. So Lorenzo, the gentleman who started Lorenzo's in Night the Christian, wound up selling years and years ago, probably in the early 80s. Moved to Florida, came back and started a new pizzeria on South Street in Philly. And that one was the one that had that real, like, the slices were huge. I don't know if it was just a marketing thing, but it worked. And they're still there and they're still awesome, but huge slices. And the sauce was proper. Like, always hated oregano. People put oregano in it. And no offense, anybody likes oregano. I do love oregano, just not in pizza. So, to me, it always came down to the dough, the sauce, and then of course the cheese. And later on, working with different friends and understanding how important good quality cheese is like really a big deal. So like the grande is a big popular one here, and that's what everybody uses that loves their pizza. But I would say I remember Lorenzo's being like a significant like part of my younger years. Um, and guess what? Even like some of the, as they call it, the church pizza, like with the, going to New York bakery. There was a bakery in Philly, New York bakery, and then also Sarcones. And they would have the little square pies or even kashes. And they would have like, I don't know if you ever try like Pizazz, which is, I don't know if that's just a local thing, but it's basically like melted American cheese, sliced, spicy banana peppers. And it was kind of like, you would think like, who puts American cheese on their pizza? It was really good. It's a really still popular hit.
Yeah, no, you know what's so funny is that the original recipe of my family's pizzeria, they used a little bit of white American cheese. And so we call it the Diarc's original, but there's something about it. It's like creamy and very delicious to have a little bit of that on a pizza.
That's interesting. I would like to try that. Yeah, I could see how that could really like be something a little bit different. That because we're all used to typical like mozzarella, either sliced like with the margarita. And then I've had pizza in Italy. My parents wound up moving back to Italy back in 2000, so I would go to Calabria very often,
Wow.
and I had the luck of being able. I mean, it's lucky, but it's not because not having your parents around all the time kind of don't feel good. But the good news is when you do go out there, you're bombarded with an immense amount of flavorful, delicious things. I mean, I didn't realize how good food really, tasted until you go to Italy. And and that sounds self-serving because I'm Italian, but it really is. I mean, you could pull a fig off a tree and you'll never taste that kind of a flavor anywhere. Most of the stuff we eat is kind of like picked raw, So we don't really have unless you have your own, farm, it's hard to really have that type of intense flavor. So having pizza out there, intense taste, whole pieces of basil and, the way they do it, and it's very light. Not if it has anything to do with the climate. But as you know, of course, dough is subject to climate. It was good, but I still like my, United States, Italian American pizza. There's always that. It's just a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It's a totally different thing. And especially like different parts of the United States, different people are doing pizza in such unique ways. And when you go to Italy, it's very regional. But we spent like a month and a half there in October and November. And it was very much by region, but the pizza it wasn't the same, but there were definite similarities between the pizzas we had.
Absolutely. And of course, every region, like you said, does it their own way. They have their own little things they do. Maybe Calabria, they put andouille or gabagol or something on it. Or, I always was a fan of, and I'm not Neapolitan whatsoever, but always a big fan of how the Napolitan make their pizzas and the Neapolitans, for those that don't know what that Napolitan means. But, they big fan of Neapolitan cuisine in general. I always say they're the best chefs and cooks. Or excuse me, best chefs and singers are the people from Naples.
Yeah.
But, like even with Strombolis, right? And, there were some places growing up like Franco Luigi's. There was some, it was always in the dough. You could always, your mouth doesn't deceive you. You know when you have a fresh, good quality product. And, it's harder now, I believe, to compete in that business. I mean, years ago, it was like, it was like sort of like you didn't have many toppings. You didn't have many things on a menu.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like it was like a grinding operation, just selling $1 pizza at a time, boom, 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 boom. And people had, that was the thing back in the day, like 80s, 90s. If you had a pizza shop, you were doing great, and but now it's not so true because there's a lot more competition. People's palates have evolved. You can't really, the margins are smaller. It's expensive to do things. You can't find the help. I know plenty of places that went out of business just because they couldn't find proper help.
Yeah.
And then you got to
That's a
make sure
big
they don't,
thing.
make sure if you put somebody out, they don't rob you. So if unless you have like 5 or 6 children and it's a family operation, maybe that'll work. But it's a tough industry now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's how we were in our family. I mean, everyone in the family worked there, and now, my dad has a loyal team of people, but sometimes it is hard to find help. Now, there's a couple places, so I don't know if you've gone to any of these places, but I wanted to talk about a few places in Philly that we hit on a pretty regular basis. Have you ever been to Badilla, Pizzeria Badilla?
No, I've heard of it. I haven't been there, but I have heard of it. I heard they're good, but I haven't been there, unfortunately. That's
Yeah.
something on the list, though. I'll have to put on my list.
Yeah, that's one of our favorites. I mean, my sister and her family go out and they do Philly pizza tours all the time. What about Vetri?
Vetri is good.
Yeah.
Vetri's a little bit more upscale. And hats off to Vetri's. They've been able to do everything from pizza to artisan pasta. I mean, they're really, he really, Mark Vetri really cares about food and executing it well and having fresh, proper ingredients. So yeah, definitely hats off to Vetri.
Okay, what about Stogie Joe's?
Stogie Joe is great. That's another one. I mean, I actually put their pizza's phenomenal. I love their strombolis too. That's another little kind of hidden treasure in South Philly, right in the heart of South Philly. The place down the street is sadly to say, Mara's just closed about a year ago or less. They were known for their brick oven pizza. They were around for like 100, literally 100 years. And unfortunately, like I said, some of these places, even with that type of history, don't always stay. For one reason or another.
Yeah, yeah, no, I hate when that happens. I mean, I will say, like, I've Philly has a really amazing Italian culture. There's a lot of Italians that live in Philly. I think there's a lot of hidden gems there of not only pizzerias, but just places that serve really good Italian food.
There is, and I don't know if this is popular to say or not, but I think it's gotten better
Yeah.
because I mean, a lot of times we seem to get nostalgic about neighborhoods, people, places, things that maybe aren't there anymore. For instance, I grew up right a block away from where I grew up. There was a place called Shanks. It was a little luncheonette that was probably no bigger than your bathroom, literally. But it's cranked out some of the most amazing sandwiches, and it's just like kind of blue collar, rustic stuff like sausage and peppers, or tripe again with the tripe. Tripe on my mind. Veal sandwiches, veal cutlets, parmesan, eggplant parmesan, whatever it is, from local bread. Crusty semolina bread, but we call it seeded bread. But anyway, a lot, and it's not there anymore, unfortunately. But there's also been places that you think about, like those that they're cranking out those $1 pizzas that I remember being little and just getting napkins and trying to sop up all that orange oil,
Yeah.
and so there's some stuff that back in the day wasn't so good. So I really take my hat off and congratulate the people that really love pizza and love to make pizza. It's a science, it's an art, and I think that's the good thing about all the competitiveness and all the different places that are around now is that you have to be good to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally right about that. Now, Vince, I wanted to make sure that anyone who's not following you, you have a good following on social media, but anyone who's not following you, I want them to go and follow you. So, guys, Vinny from South Philly, there's underscores under each one of the words, but go ahead and follow him on Instagram. And is there anywhere else where people can connect with you?
Yes, so I'm also on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. On my show that I also do a podcast called Inside Hollywood with Vinny. That's on YouTube. So please subscribe to that, and you can watch Washington Avenue. It's on there. It's on there for free. I just want everybody to kind of enjoy it. So you can go there and watch a free movie. It's only 15 minutes. So it's a short film, and I think you'll like it. Again, that's on YouTube under Inside Hollywood with Vinny, and to a lesser degree, like X or whatever. But my primary social media is YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to check out your movie. Thank you so much for taking the time and being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Erica. And now I'm hungry, so I have to go order some pizza.
Yeah, me too.